Our last story comes courtesy of The Intercept. I'm not trying to glaze, but they're one of the best media outlets out there right now. Shout out to Ryan Grimm. Shout out to Jeremy Scahill. Shout out to Matt Sledge, who was the author of this article. They're doing exceptional journalism. Most of their coverage, of course, centers on the ongoing genocide in Gaza, but they are not limited to just that. They do, of course, talk about domestic issues as well as foreign affairs. And this domestic issue is titled GOP Representative Backtracks on Bill That Could Let Marco Rubio Revoke Passports from Israel. Critics, the bill alarmed civil liberties advocates who feared Rubio could use it to punish pro-Palestine Americans. I saw this on Instagram. Hassan Piker posted it on his Instagram story, and I immediately said to myself, well, even though I had no interest in leaving the country until at least 2028, but the revocation of my passport would be a flagrant First Amendment violation. It would be a gross display of federal overreach to limit an individual's ability to travel based on a fucking opinion that they have. And my opinions on Israel-Palestine, on the genocide in Gaza, are well documented, both on this show and on my YouTube channel. Marco Rubio would have no shortage of evidence to pull my passport away from me. The article begins, a top Republican lawmaker in the House of Representatives is backtracking on a proposal that would have given Secretary of State Marco Rubio the power to revoke American citizens' passports if he decides that they have provided, quote-unquote, material support to terrorists. The proposal, by the way, speech is not materially supporting a terrorist. This is gross. The definition of terrorism is already arbitrary. And now the way in which the federal government assesses material support to terrorism is just as arbitrary. Do you know what material support to terrorism is? Giving money or weapons. Do you think that, like, me, as a YouTuber with 617 subscribers, is giving material support to terrorists by just advocating for Palestinian liberation? If you do believe that, you might be biased in some degree. I encourage you to have a little bit of introspection. I'm not an arms dealer. I'm not Venmoing Hamas so that way they could build more bathtub rockets. I'm merely advocating for the cessation of a genocide in which Palestinians are being ethnically cleansed on live fucking TV for the entire world to see. The proposal from Representative Brian Mast, Republican Florida, sparked a backlash from civil society groups after he introduced it as part of a larger State Department reorganization bill last week. On Sunday, Mast introduced a manager's amendment that would strip the provision from the bill he introduced days before. The manager's amendment itself must still be approved at a Wednesday hearing to apply to the larger House bill, which faces an uncertain future in the Senate. Civil liberties supporters celebrated Monday. By the way, the Republicans in the Senate, except for maybe Rand Paul, would full-throatedly endorse this bill because they just love Israel so much. They think that telling Israel to stop genociding Palestinians is akin to Holocaust denialism. That is how brainwashed and how, well, I mean, it's not even brainwashing. It's AIPAC money that has allowed this type of thought to fester. But I'm looking at Ted Cruz, I'm looking at Lindsey Graham, I'm looking at Tom Cotton, and they're like salivating at the chance to vote yes on this bill so that way they can further criminalize support for the Palestinians. Civil liberties supporters celebrated Monday after warning last week that the bill endangered the right to travel freely. One advocate had warned that it essentially granted the Secretary of State thought police power. It's a really great thing that this provision got struck, said Kia Hamadanchi, an attorney with the ACLU. Quote, it was hugely problematic, created a risk of abuse of politicized enforcement. These people who introduce these bills are probably just fucking stupid and don't think that the elected officials would extend their powers beyond what the official bill calls for. Although this is targeted at like anti-Israel sentiment, it would at a certain point be used to punish those who simply protest the Trump administration to whatever degree. Marco Rubio could use it against people who make fun of him for being short. That's the precedent that is set with this bill. That's the potential precedent that we're looking at here. They don't recognize that the fascists that are in power are looking to gobble up as much power as possible. It starts with a bill like this, but then eventually goes beyond it. Mast's office did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Under Mast's original proposal, I almost fell out of my fucking chair. The Secretary of State would have been empowered to refuse or revoke passports of people they deem to have materially supported terrorists. This also comes at an interesting time when you have the implementation of the Real ID system. Americans don't have to get a Real ID. However, if they don't, you cannot travel domestically without your passport. And remember, it's not so easy for everyone to just go to the fucking DMV. My experience with getting the Real ID was I drove 10 minutes to the DMV. I sat in the DMV for 30 minutes, got a new picture taken, and then 10 days later that shit came to my house. And now I don't need my passport to go to California or Vermont or Massachusetts. But not everyone is as privileged as I am. I recognize the ease of accessibility I have and how that does not exist for everybody else. That's another reason why this is a very nefarious bill. People travel out of state for whatever fucking reason they want. To see family, to go on vacation, for, I don't know, maybe to go to a funeral if a friend of theirs passes away in Minnesota. If this bill were to pass and they're vocally anti-Israel, they would not be able to go because Marco Rubio would go to their house and light their fucking passport on fire. Activists were especially concerned the provision could be used against critics of Israel, given Rubio's aggressive move to revoke green cards and student visas from non-citizens who have publicly demonstrated support for Palestinians. I've said on multiple occasions, the treatment of immigrants when it comes to their expression of support of Palestine will eventually reach natural-born U.S. citizens and naturalized U.S. citizens, and that is the fucking point that we're teetering on. It started with Mahmoud Khalil. It started with the hundreds and thousands of students across the country who had their student visas taken away from them for doing what Mahmoud Khalil did, protesting peacefully for the liberation of Palestine. And now Congress is looking at a bill that would penalize natural-born and naturalized U.S. citizens for doing what Mahmoud Khalil did. It is a gross violation of freedom of speech. What conservatives don't understand is freedom of speech. They think that freedom of speech is them being able to say the N-word and not having consequences bestowed upon them. Freedom of speech applies to the government. It's to prevent the government from levying consequences upon you for things that they don't like. We're here, guys. Like, we're at this point. Marco Rubio is an Israel dick rider. And now he's looking to penalize people who criticize Israel for no reason other than he's an Israel dick rider. Mass amendment would also remove a provision that would allow the Secretary of State to revoke passports for people who have been convicted or charged of material support of designated terror groups, saying that Palestinians should not be slaughtered. You're not materially supporting terrorism. You're practicing morality. You're a moral and sane individual who does not like having to live through another Holocaust. But remember, the Trump administration and virtually the entire federal government along party lines does not view the Palestinians as human beings. Their Islamophobia prevents them from seeing the humanity of the Palestinians. Therefore, they're open to the wholesale slaughter of them, as many Republicans have said pretty out in the open on multiple occasions.